How are you? Mark asked the question the same way he had hundreds of times before. Claire smiled without looking up from the dishes. I'm fine. Mark didn't answer. After a long silence, she finally looked at him. What? Mark took a slow breath. I don't think I've ever heard you say anything else. Claire laughed softly. Because I'm fine. Were you fine when your grandmother died? She hesitated. Were you fine when you lost your job 2 years ago? Another pause. Were you fine last week when you cried alone in the car? Claire's smile disappeared. I, 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 she whispered. Nothing came out. Mark looked at her with a sadness that had been growing for years. I know what coffee you like, he said quietly. I know your favorite movie. I know how you organize the kitchen. Then his voice almost broke. But I don't know what you feel. He picked up his jacket and said, I need some air. The front door closed gently behind him. For the first time in 8 years together, Claire wondered if I'm fine had been pushing away the person she loved most. Claire was 31. She had what most people would call a good childhood. Her parents stayed together. There was always food on the table. She did well at school. No shouting, no violence, no obvious trauma. If someone had asked about her childhood, she would have smiled and said it was normal. And she would have believed it. But memories have a strange way of changing when you look at them more closely. One afternoon, when she was about 7 years old, she came home crying after a fight with a friend. Her mother looked up from making dinner. You're okay, she said gently. You'll forget about it tomorrow. Claire nodded, wiped away her tears, and went to her room. No one asked what had happened. No one asked how she felt. It wasn't cruel. It was simply over. Years later, the same thing happened. When she was disappointed, or scared, or embarrassed, a feeling appeared and disappeared without ever being spoken about. Slowly, Claire learned an invisible lesson. Good children didn't make emotions into problems. So she became easy to teach, easy to babysit, easy to praise. Teachers called her mature. Relatives said she was so independent. No one realized that independence sometimes begins as loneliness. As an adult, Claire was exactly the person everyone expected her to be. Reliable, kind, calm under pressure. The person everyone could count on. Except there was one question she could never answer. Not honestly. How do you feel? She didn't know, not because she was hiding the answer, because somewhere along the way she'd stopped hearing herself. For a while, Mark convinced himself Claire was simply quiet. Everyone expresses love differently, he thought. She remembered birthdays. She packed his lunch when he worked late. She noticed when he was tired before he did. She cared. He never doubted that. What he missed was feeling known by the person he loved most. So one evening, he tried something different. "I've been really anxious lately," he admitted. "My company is laying people off. I keep wondering if I'll be next." Claire reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry. You're going through that." "Thanks," he said. Then he waited. The silence stretched between them. Finally, he asked, "What about you? How have you been?" Claire smiled automatically. "I'm fine." The words came so quickly that she barely noticed saying them. Mark looked down at his plate. "I don't know how to help someone who never lets me see them." Claire frowned. "You do see me." "I see what you do," he said softly. "I don't know what you carry." His words landed somewhere deep inside her, but she couldn't explain why. She wanted to tell him something. Anything. Instead, she just sat there. The silence answered for her. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He sat outside on the front steps, staring at the empty street. He opened his phone and began typing. "I don't know if we're growing together anymore." He stopped, read the words, then deleted them. He wasn't ready to give up. But for the first time, he wondered how long love could survive without honesty. A few weeks later, Claire met her older sister for coffee. They talked about work, their parents, old family stories. Then, almost casually, her sister asked, "Do you remember ever talking about feelings when we were kids?" Claire laughed. "Not really. I've been seeing a therapist." Claire looked surprised. "Why?" Her sister stirred her coffee for a moment before answering. "I spent 40 years pretending I didn't have emotions." Claire blinked. "But our childhood wasn't bad." "No," her sister agreed. "It wasn't." She looked at Claire with quiet understanding. But sometimes, what shapes us isn't what happened. It was what never happened. The sentence followed Claire home. She heard it while washing dishes, while driving to work, while lying awake beside Mark. For the first time, she asked herself a question she'd avoided her entire life. If nothing was wrong, why did I feel so empty? A few days later, she booked an appointment with a psychologist. Not because she believed something was broken. She wasn't sure she'd ever really known herself. A week later, Claire sat in the waiting room, wondering if she should leave. She almost did. A voice in her head kept repeating the same thought. Nothing bad happened. You're taking someone else's place. People with real problems need therapy. Then the receptionist called her name. A few minutes later, she was sitting across from Dr. Peddle. He didn't ask about trauma. He didn't ask about her marriage. Instead, he asked a simple question. When you were upset as a child, what happened? Claire thought for a moment. My parents would tell me I'd be okay. And then we'd moved on. He nodded. What happened when you were happy? She smiled faintly. The same thing. Dr. Peddle was quiet for a few seconds. Did anyone ever ask what you were feeling? Claire searched her memory. Birthday parties, school, family dinners, Christmas mornings, long car rides. She couldn't remember a single conversation about her emotions. Finally, she shook her head. I don't think so. Dr. Peddle leaned forward slightly. Claire, children aren't born knowing how to understand their emotions. They learn by borrowing the language of the adults around them. When a child hears, "You look disappointed," or "That must have been scary," they slowly learn to recognize what they're feeling. But if those conversations never happen, the feelings don't disappear. They stayed inside unnamed. Claire stared at the floor. So, nothing was actually wrong with me? Dr. Peddle smiled gently. I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I think no one ever taught you the emotional vocabulary you needed. The words hit her harder than she expected. For years, she'd believed she was cold, broken, difficult to love. What if she wasn't? What if she'd simply been missing a language everyone else seemed to speak? Before the session ended, Dr. Peddle gave her one small exercise. 3 times a day, pause for just 1 minute. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Don't try to fix it. Don't judge it. Just give it a name. As Clara stood to leave, Dr. Peddle added one final thought. This isn't about blaming your parents. They probably gave you what they were taught. But you don't have to stop where they did. You can learn a new language. For the first time in years, Claire left with something she hadn't carried into the office. Not certainty, not answers, just hope. And sometimes hope is enough to begin. Change didn't happen all at once. For the first few days, Claire forgot the exercise completely. When Dr. Peddle's question came back to her, "What am I feeling right now?" her first answer was always the same. "I don't know." But gradually, "I don't know" became "I'm nervous, I'm disappointed, I'm lonely." And for the first time, her emotions had names instead of becoming tears she couldn't explain. One evening, Mark came home from work carrying takeaway. They ate in silence. It wasn't an angry silence. It was the kind that grows after years of saying everything except what matters. As they cleared the table, Mark asked the same question he always asked. How was your day? Claire felt the familiar answer rise automatically. I'm fine. The words reached her lips. Then she stopped. She took a slow breath. My manager criticized my presentation in front of everyone today. Claire looked down at her hands and said, I kept smiling all afternoon and pretended I was okay. Her voice became quieter, but honestly, it really hurt. Mark froze, not because of what she said, because it was the first time she trusted him with something real. He walked over and gently took her hand. I'm sorry, he said. That must have been painful. Claire waited. She expected him to tell her she was overreacting, to remind her it wasn't a big deal, to tell her she'd be fine. Instead, he simply stayed beside her, and something inside her relaxed. Then, almost without thinking, she whispered the words she had never been able to say. I don't always know what I feel. Mark looked at her. She continued, tears filling her eyes. No one ever asked. The room fell silent. But this silence felt different. It wasn't empty. It was full of understanding. Mark wrapped his arms around her. You don't have to figure it out alone anymore. For the first time in years, Keller cried in front of someone instead of hiding in her car. Claire's childhood wasn't defined by cruelty. It was defined by absence. No one taught her that feelings deserved words. No one showed her that emotions were something to explore instead of ignore. Her parents loved her, but love and emotional awareness are not always the same thing. Sometimes parents pass on what they were given, and sometimes what they were given wasn't enough. If you grew up hearing, you're okay, don't be so sensitive, everything's fine, you may have learned to hide your emotions so well that even you can't find them anymore. But emotional awareness isn't something you're born with. It's something you learn. And no matter how old you are, it's never too late. The next time someone asks, "How are you?" pause before answering. Maybe the most healing words you'll ever say aren't, "I'm fine." Maybe they're simply, "This is how I really feel." And now a message to parents. If you're a parent listening to this, remember something important. Your child doesn't need you to have all the answers. They don't need perfect advice. They don't need you to fix every problem. What they need most is to know that their feelings are safe with you. When they say, I'm scared, resist to urge to reply, there's nothing to be afraid of. Instead, try saying, that sounds scary. Tell me what happened. When they're disappointed, don't rush to make the feeling disappear. Stay with them. Listen. Help them find the words. Those small conversations may seem ordinary today, but they become your child's inner voice tomorrow. The way you respond to their emotions today is often the way they'll respond to their own emotions years from now. You don't have to be a perfect parent. No one is. You just have to make home a place where feelings are welcomed instead of hidden.